Hello?
Hi, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Doing pretty good. Thanks for calling. I'm glad we could finally get together and talk.
Yeah, it's been a crazy week.
Yeah, I can imagine. Congratulations, by the way. I really think that that this is a real achievement. 100,000 subscribers is pretty cool.
Yeah, I'd like to say it's not... It, I appreciate you saying congratulations, but I don't feel like it should be congratulations to me. It should be congratulations to everyone who's on the subreddit, because moderators don't control it, advertise it, anything like that. We're just kind of trying to be as passive as we can.
I see. Is that the philosophy overall? Just sort of build it and they will come type attitude.
In many ways, yes. At least we try to be. It's gotten increasingly difficult to do that with the growth of shit Reddit says and against men's rights and stuff. And now the admins cracking down on things so hard. And
oh, really? Okay. Well, I was going to get to that later on in the interview. But first of all,
yeah, we can talk about more later.
Men's Rights Reddit was started in 2008, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Were you one of the original people on the moderation team?
No.
No. You came on later. What time did you come on board?
Right about when the anonymization started. So when what was that? Acregate, Violent Acregate.
I'm trying to remember. I can't.
That's when it was. I just had to remember his name. It's been so many years now.
Okay, yeah, okay. So what time was that?
Oh, jeez, I don't remember what year that was.
2009, 2010.
2012, I think.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, give us some background on that whole episode, if you
could.
Just for people who aren't terribly familiar with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the episode, as I recall, I forget the guy's name from one of the Gawker websites. Adrian Chen, that's who it was. Adrian Chen had been given some information about the real name of Reddit's probably most notorious not safe for work user, Violent Acres.
Okay.
And it led to Violent Acres' real name being available to Adrian Chen. And Adrian followed up on it, thinking this was a good story to publish, interviewed Violent Acres, and ended up publishing Violent Acres' name, his real name, his real identity, linking it to the unsavory things that Violent Acres did on Reddit, including a story Violent Acres told in which he had sex with his stepdaughter. And more importantly, though, he insinuated that Violent Acres was involved in child pornography, if I recall correctly.
And was this Violent Acres guy? Was he a subscriber to Men's Rights Reddit?
No, he had nothing to do with Men's Rights.
Okay.
I'll get to how it relates to Men's Rights though in a second.
Sure.
So he insinuated that Violent Acres was a part of this, and Violent Acres his life was destroyed. He got fired from his job from the fallout. He got harassed by people, especially shit Reddit says users, I assume, or people of that mindset who think that it's their job to exact justice for social social justice warriors, basically.
Yeah.
And at the same time, they took over his personal subreddit and a number of other subreddits. And on those subreddits, they posted shit Reddit says users who got control of these subreddits had a little link or a little text in the sidebar exclaiming their victory and then saying, "Next up, men's rights."
I see.
with the implicit statement that, you know, this came about as a result of revealing the name and identity of a person with whom they disagreed and whose life they ruined.
Right.
So they were going to do that to the Men's Rights next. So the moderators at the time, let me think if I can recall their names. Ignatius Loyola, Anarchist. Geez, I don't even remember the other ones. Zelda, few others. Decided that, you know, it would be in their best interest to anonymize their accounts so that, you know, and anything that they said on their main accounts that could lead back to their identities, well, if you can't figure out who is who, and if they aren't necessarily even moderators anymore, if you can't tell who they are, it's more difficult to control them. Even if their identities get released, it doesn't necessarily go back to the Men's Rights subreddit because they have deniability.
Okay.
But that doesn't work unless there's deniability that they're still the moderators. So if it was a one-to-one change in moderators, then, you know, it's relatively easy to try and figure out who's who. So they needed to bring on more moderators. And so the moderator list of Men's Rights grew. And in order to, account for that anonymity, and also to help out with the burgeoning subscriber numbers.
I see.
Yeah.
Back to like the original intent of Men's Rights Reddit. It was, I guess it started out just like any other subreddit started out. Some people wanted to designate a subject matter for a specific subreddit. Was the intent ever greater beyond that? Was there ever any, originally, to your knowledge, was there ever any original intent for it to become a hotbed of hardcore activism, or was it just meant to be a subreddit at first?
You know, as I understand it, the person formerly known as Clue2U, who at the time went by the username PN6, is actually a member of A Voice for Men, and you'd have to ask him because he created the whole thing. So I'm not aware of what his original intention was, or what the original intention of any of the moderators that followed, Canuck 876, and then Ignatius Loyola and Clue2U again. Then Clue2U stepped down, Ignatius Loyola and Anarchist, and then lots of moderators after that. So I can only comment from 2012 on.
Okay. So right now, Men's Rights Reddit is standing right around 100,500 or so subscribers. And at any given time, you have anywhere between, 150 people on to up to 500 people on.
Yeah, actually, our statistics are public. If you go to reddit.com/r/mensrights/ traffic summary, I think. You can, we made our traffic public a little while ago. So it should be available. You can see the number of daily users, the number of monthly clicks, and the number of monthly unique IP addresses and everything like that.
But anyway, are you surprised that it's grown to be this big? I mean, did anybody envision it ever be? Because right now it's no longer a small subreddit anymore. I mean, of course, compared to other subreddits, it's not really big, but it's now a sizable subreddit. Did you ever think that it would ever get this big as soon as? Did anybody ever think that it was ever going to get this big as soon as it did? Or did anybody ever think it was ever going to be anything bigger than a relatively small and obscure subreddit? But did anybody foresee this?
I'd like to say yes, but I have to say I don't really think about it that often. every 10,000 users, it's like a mini, yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah, sure.
It's really great to see how many people support the idea or at least want to get involved, because we definitely have subscribers who don't support the kind of common narrative within men's rights. And that's okay. We fully welcome the dissenting voices, and nonetheless, it's good to see people who want to get involved in this discussion. So I can't say that I thought it would get to 100,000, but I didn't see any reason why it wouldn't eventually get to that point, considering it's had incredibly steady numbers of about 100 to 150 subscribers per day ever since I joined. It's never really dipped. There are spikes when there are dramatic or what's the term? Scandalous events that occur. You always see these huge spikes, like 800 users in a day.
800 new users in a day is what you're saying.
Pardon?
800 new subscribers in a day.
Yeah,
right?
800 new subscribers in a day. Whenever some major report gets published or something else that draws attention to men's rights, it always spikes the users. But other than that, it's consistently 100, 150 a day. So there's no reason, it never has dropped off. There's no reason to suggest it's going to.
What were some of the big events that really brought a lot of readers to Men's Rights Reddit? Can you name just a couple of any specific events that were really remarkable?
Well, Violent Acregate. I think it was like a week straight of at least 500 users per day. Something crazy like that. Yeah. Issues like that. Jeez. It's been a busy couple of years.
Yeah, past 2 years have been very eventful in men's rights.
Yeah. None other events are occurring to mind, which is unfortunate.
Well, it's been like you said, it's been for the past 2 years. There seems to have been something new happening at least once every couple of weeks, where something happens.
The conference in the summer,
mm-hmm.
the AVFM Men's Issues Conference. So that made a lot of news, and that drew a whole bunch of subscribers.
Right.
So I feel like there's probably a much larger, vein of people in society that would like to be involved in the conversation, or would be happy being a subscriber and reading the kinds of things that are posted there, if they are exposed to it. But unfortunately, a lot of the first exposure people have is through some men's rights user going to a different subreddit, saying something maybe innocuous or maybe a little on the aggressive side, and then a whole bunch of people going, "Oh, you're from men's rights, you're a horrible person, blah, blah, blah." And then other people read that and say, "Oh, well, men's rights must be full of horrible people." But every time they come to the subreddit and they see what it's actually like, they go, it's not what everyone made it out to be. It's not that bad.
Surprised. Yeah, we get that a lot at AVFM too,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. AVFM has the exact same thing, because people cherry pick the quotes, and all of a sudden, AVFM is all about beating up women and raping people, and then you actually read the things, and, well, that's not quite what they meant. That's mischaracterization. This isn't so bad. They've got some valid points. So.
Has the Reddit administration ever been hostile or unwelcoming to the subreddit?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah. There was one, Invictus. Invictus.
This is an administrator you're talking about, right?
Former administrator.
Okay.
So Invictus would crack down any little thing that happened. They'd crack down on us. He even banned one of our moderators for quoting Yishan, the CEO of Reddit, I think he is, or was, So he quoted Yishan's exact words on the issue of doxing, in which he said, a, a reputable journalist or news organization is allowed to publish real names, and that is not considered doxing. And our moderator said, well, you can't publish this on your blog, this name on the blog, but if you can find a journalist to do it, then that's not doxing, and that would be fine. And Invictus perma-banned the account, shadow banned the account, and that moderator's been almost mostly inactive ever since. He created a new moderator account, but I mean it was just silly. And then later on, someone caught Invictus using the slang and the common terminology of shit Reddit says, and it became very apparent after that that he was on a different account and an active user of shit Reddit says. And then eventually he was banned, or he was released. I don't know what the detail was, and now he's a open shit Reddit says user on the Invictus account.
Right.
So the other admins have been more even-handed, but they do recognize that a lot of drama comes from the Men's Rights subreddit.
Right.
And so they maybe are a little heavier-handed on us than they would be with other subreddits that are less drama-filled.
Right. You mentioned shit Reddit says, one of the handful of very actively opposed subreddits to Men's Rights subreddit. We hear about downvote brigades and, false flagging and people complaining to admins about certain, about things that happen on Men's Rights.
Yeah.
How common are they, and how big do these efforts get that you can see? I know that that you don't always have the data available that the admins do.
So we had a thread on Men's Rights a little while ago in which there were a lot of downvotes going on. And while Men's Rights does see downvotes, it's very rarely at that scale. And so I sent a message to the admins saying, look, I think there's some voting, some abnormal voting going on. And they said, no, it's completely organic.
Really?
That's the term that they used. So to a certain extent, another good example on 2X chromosomes after that subreddit went default. There were tons of claims of downvote brigades and threats and rape threats and all this kind of stuff going on. And when the admins looked into it, they said some of those threats were sent by accounts from the same people
who were complaining about it.
Claiming that they were getting rape threats. They were sending it to themselves to try
I remember
the system.
I remember seeing that post from the admin, or maybe somebody copy and paste the post. He said that they investigated all these supposed threats, and there were, I think there were like 50 of them or something like that. And he said all but one or two of them came from the very people who were complaining about these violations. Or
they didn't happen. There weren't necessarily, 48 of them rape threats sent to themselves. There was a combination of, people making up stories, thinking the admins maybe couldn't see.
Right.
The private messages or something, and see that there was no actual message, and some sent to themselves. Yeah.
Right. But the administrators obviously didn't like this. They didn't appreciate that one bit, that these people were trying to manipulate the system.
I think they're a bit thicker skinned than that. They were annoyed that it was causing so much drama, but they were like, whatever, people are stupid.
Yeah, right.
But these kinds of events suggest to me that downvote brigades are not as common as people think. They just... I don't know. I mean, that one Reddit post that I meant, or the Men's Rights post that I mentioned that had an excess of downvotes, it was cross-linked from Against Men's Rights, the AMR subreddit. And there was I was reading the Against Men's Rights thread on it, and people were saying, "Don't get involved, don't vote. You guys are making them look good," and stuff like that. And then you find out from the admins, it's actually men's rights users downvoting these stupid comments. And they were stupid comments, and they deserve to be downvoted because they didn't contribute to anything. But we just don't normally see that many downvotes, regardless. But it was men's rights users, and they're like, no, we shouldn't do that. You're gonna get shadow banned, and you're gonna make them look good. Well, actually, we did look good. It was men's rights users doing it. That these kind of downvote brigades don't happen as often as people think. And at the same time, there's really a definition disconnect between feminist subreddits and, say, the men's rights subreddits on what people think a brigade is. So if I follow a cross post to a different subreddit and I post a comment, they'll say, "Oh, that's an invasion, that's a downvote, or that's a brigade." Not a downvote brigade, but a brigade. But this comes from a mentality that they have an enclosed, controlled community. And so any, like a gated housing settlement kind of deal, right? And anyone coming in from the outside is clearly in violation of their territory. And yet their subreddit is public. It's not private, it's public. And so people are allowed to do that. They're allowed to participate in any subreddit they want, whether they're a subscriber or not, whether they follow the common narrative or not. They are allowed to do those things. A brigade, at least from a men's rights perspective, and I think from an admin perspective, is when a person follows a link to another subreddit and then just starts massively downvoting everyone they see, or commenting aggressively and harassingly on lots and lots and lots of comments. That I would call a brigade. But if it's just someone posting, following a crosslink, that should be an essential feature of Reddit. That's how you get these large discussions between users from various viewpoints that can have. Look at the best of subreddit. It's a subreddit devoted to this kind of activity. Mm-hmm. Cross-posting can be a very valuable thing if you don't think your community is so insular that it can't handle any outsider, any different opinion, which the feminist subreddit seem to have. This opinion that no outside opinion is allowed.
Other than, false flagging things and downvote brigades, however rarely that happens, what other, if any, efforts have been made by the opponents of the men's rights movement and opponents of Men's Rights Reddit to shut down or marginalize the subreddit? I know we touched on this earlier on, but has there ever, outside of the Reddit organization structure, has there ever been any real attempt on censorship or anything like that, or just people? If you could give me some examples of people targeting Men's Rights Reddit specifically for slander and marginalization, throwing anything they can at Men's Rights Reddit specifically in order to keep people from subscribing or keep people from going there, or just to give Men's Rights Reddit a bad name.
There have been a number of articles on the Gawker website, for example, or not just the Gawker website, but their whole family of, let's call them news blogs, because they're not really...
They're not news.
It's not news. They're not really journalists. They're journalist wannabes writing on blogs that are very popular. So there have been many times in which the men's rights subreddit has been mentioned, and always, especially with the whole, what was that guy's name in California? The atrocious...
you're talking about Roger Elliott.
Yeah, Roger Elliott. Trying to associate men's rights with Roger Elliott, for example,
Huge.
or trying to associate men's rights with who's that MMA fighter?
Oh, that guy. I know who you're talking about. The guy
Yeah.
who beat up his girlfriend or whatever.
Right. So
It was still allegedly, but it's pretty clear. It seems pretty clear now that the guy's guilty of beating the crap out of her. I mean, that's all the
sure, but at the same time, that there were some news articles that came out at the time saying this guy is a men's rights activist,
Right.
and Roger Elliott is a men's rights activist, and there's
They're not.
nothing.
There's no evidence. Yeah, we that was something that it meant that most men had a big problem with.
Right.
The amount of yellow journalism surrounding that entire event it was massive, and it was shameless too.
Yeah, it's just it's silly why these people feel the need. You know, there's lots of things that people can criticize the men's rights subreddit about. That you don't need to make up things. There's lots of things to criticize the feminism subreddit. Every subreddit has its issues. The men's rights movement itself has tons of things that are criticism worthy. That's not a bad thing. Criticism can be a very good thing. It can be a means to identify problems and stimulate growth and change. But the need to make up these associations to try and it's basically an ad hominem attack. If you have no intelligence or ability to address the actual issues, and you feel the need to attack by slandering the group, you say more about yourself than you say about the group you're slandering. So, yeah, I mean, these things happen, and oddly enough, there's always a spike in our subscribers whenever they do it.
Sure.
You know, these people say, "Oh, this men's rights subreddit is horrible. It
attracts more attention."
Elliot Roger, you know, he was a men's rights person. I'm going to go there and harass people and social justice, hurrah! And then they go, "This isn't so bad. I'm going to stay a subscriber." So, whatever.
You're talking about criticism coming from the outside of the men's rights movement or outside of Men's Rights Reddit. Let's talk about some criticism coming from within. There are a lot of men's rights activists who have asserted that the subreddit has become kind of a watered down corner of the men's rights movement, and that the social justice warriors have taken over, and that maybe the mods they're not addressing it, or to the extent that they should. Like you say, it's a public, you know, this is a public thing. Anybody can come in and do whatever they want.
Right.
But how do you answer it? Because, like, you know, I mean, I've seen a lot. I myself have seen a lot of posts on there, and said to myself, what does this thing do? Who did this? You know, and you know, you see people coming in. You see social justice warriors coming in and causing up a big stir, and they annoy maybe people, men's rights activists on the subreddit. Maybe they get too upset about it. Maybe they shouldn't get this upset about it. But I'm sure you've heard this type of criticism before. How do you answer that?
So I've been around the subreddit long before I was a moderator.
Right.
Probably about 2009. And the subreddit was certainly smaller then, and each individual user was certainly much more active on the subreddit than they are now. There were, shall we say, powerhouse names. There were certain names that everyone knew who they were. And that could be from extremes. On one side, there was Demon Spawn and Jeremiah and who's the other guy? Offensive Brute. And these were guys who were much more kind of traditionalists, and their message was always no moderation. It's very like libertarian views. And, you know, I commend them on the consistency of their belief. They were not people to waver. They were very adamant, not wishy-washy. And they wanted no censorship, low moderation, but they wanted all the feminists banned,
Right.
which was always hilarious.
Right.
And then you have, on the other side, I remember when Ignatius Loyola first joined, he claimed to be a feminist, and there were people that just rallied against him, and I think there were a couple other users that joined in on that, claiming that they were feminists. And you know, Men's Rights has tons of former feminists.
Sure.
Or people that still call themselves feminists and also men's rights activists. And so you have that opposite spectrum, and then they're saying, get rid of you know, they're saying stupid things like, oh, the moderators have to crack down on language and, you know, PR, blah, blah, blah. And each side is going to accuse the other side of being a social justice warrior. And they're going to accuse any opinion that is shared that is not theirs as being contributing to the watering down of the subreddit or taking the subreddit away from its core values. And that hasn't really changed. There's just more people, more different views, and there's more groups. There's not so many power users anymore, but there's more groups of people, and they all think that all the other groups are watering down the subreddit, and it's really not that bad. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah.
What do you see happening in the future? Do you expect further growth? Do you expect Men's Rights Reddit to continue to be the hub of men's rights activity? I mean, I know I rely a lot on Men's Rights Reddit. I get a lot of my stories from there. It's a place where a lot of people's the go-to place that a lot of people use, the first go-to place, the first thing they do when they get home, they come and they look at Men's Rights Reddit. Do you think it's going to continue to be that way? You think it's going to continue to grow in popularity, or what do you see in the future?
Well, this is something I've been thinking about lately, but I haven't really talked about with anyone. I kind of have this sneaky suspicion that Reddit is kind of peaking in the way that Dig did so many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm especially concerned about this changeover. Alexis Ohanian, did you hear about this?
No, I did not.
So Yishan Wang has resigned as CEO, and Alexis Ohanian, one of the founders of Reddit, has returned to be the CEO, if I recall correctly. And this was just like in the past week this happened or so.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Or
I don't know, because, you know, part of it, I think Alexis Ohanian was kind of a founding member of the Reddit. I mean, Reddit started with this idea of allowing anything to be said, that open communication, discussion, freedom of speech, unrestricted speech, I should say, because freedom of speech is something slightly different, but unrestricted speech is not a bad thing, that it is a good thing. It is a vehicle for social change and things like this. And that's what the kind of core of it was at the beginning. That's why there were so many not safe for work subreddits and such a blind eye being turned to a lot of the seedier sides of Reddit, because with the good you also, or with the bad you also get the good, and that good is more important than the bad. But he's been in a lot of, he's been involved in some projects that suggest his views may have changed. And a website of 500,000 users is different from the, I think they're at like 100,000 or 100 million users or something crazy now. I have no idea.
Right.
Most of them are not accounts. These are just lurkers without accounts.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it's very different to handle a website of that scale. And actually, I was just, do you watch the TV show The Newsroom?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. I think you're missing out.
Okay, all right.
It's a fantastic show. And in fact, So the premise of the newsroom, and I have a relevance here, so hear me out.
Mhm.
So the newsroom is this TV show in which they address real life news issues as they probably should have been addressed at the time. So it's a criticism of all the news, all the trashy, editorialized news that is going on these days. And the season premiere of this season actually addressed the Boston bombing and Reddit's atrocious behavior during the Boston bombing.
Oh. Mhm.
Are you aware of that story?
I'm not. No. I heard of it, but I'm not like.
Right. So during the Boston bombing, and Reddit wasn't the only one. There were 4chan involved in this. There was lots of people online. This was social justice warriors gone amok.
Right.
But for, you had people who were not necessarily normally social justice warriors acting like social justice warriors because of the atrocity of the events that occurred, the bombing and the lives that were destroyed and people who were harmed and everything. And so when pictures of the marathon went public, Reddit users, among others, tried to see if they could find anything and help in the search to locate suspicious people. And they ended up misidentifying a person. They identified someone who was not actually one of the bombers, was not actually a suspect, and did nothing wrong. And because I think he was, he might have looked suspicious, or he might have been one of the people carrying the backpack that just happened to be the right size to have potentially carried a pressure cooker or something like that. And so Reddit users, among other people, started harassing the person, their family, everything like that. If I recall correctly, the guy ended up committing suicide because he just couldn't handle the harassment. There were death threats. There was all sorts of things going on, and it was really social justice run amok. And in the fallout of that, you see a real crackdown on Reddit of vigilantism. Any suggestion of vigilantism, of social justice warriors taking it outside of just discussion on Reddit.
Mm-hmm.
The admins are cracking down on that, things like that. And so that has changed kind of the core of Reddit, this open platform for discussion. And I've already kind of seen that there's this, there's a phrase for it. They're kind of pushing the boundaries a little bit. Once you already start banning some types of speech,
right,
it becomes easier to ban other speech. Just saying, well, what's one more little type of rule to ban things that are bad PR, bad publicity, bad for the community, etc. And it's really pushing, and I think Reddit is peaking in terms of its quality.
I see.
In many ways. So, I think certainly for the next 1 or 2 years, I see the men's rights subreddit still growing without any real change. But beyond that, I really don't know, because I can't predict if this effect I'm starting to notice is real and maybe is going to start to take over. Or if it's maybe just all in my head. And I've already kind of seen that there's this, there's a phrase for it. They're kind of pushing the boundaries a little bit. Once you already start banning some types of speech, it becomes easier to ban other speech. Just saying, well, what's one more little type of rule to ban things that are bad PR, bad publicity, bad, for the community, etc. And it's really pushing, and I think Reddit is peaking in terms of its quality. In many ways. So I think certainly for the next 1 or 2 years, I see the men's rights subreddit still growing without any real change. But beyond that, I really don't know because I can't predict if this effect I'm starting to notice is real and maybe is going to start to take over, or if it's maybe just all in my head.
That brings me to, I'm going to make this the last question, but
Okay.
that's sort of a good segue into this question, which I just popped into my head, actually.
Sure.
We've seen what's happened with Facebook and most recently Twitter, where there's now active censorship going on by
Right.
feminists. There's no doubt about this. What's happened at Twitter is, and we know
Right.
this, Janet Bloomfield has had her Twitter account suspended several times. We know.
Oh yeah, I was reading her recent Judgy Bitch post on it. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's just no doubt this is what's going on. That there's this organization, Wham, women.
Yep.
Yeah, they've basically been hired by Twitter to basically censor people who criticize feminism, and they're wrapping it up in this idea that, well, women are being harassed, and so we have to identify these people and get them out of here. But what they're actually doing is they're banning people and they're censoring people that are simply criticizing feminists, like Anita Sarkeesian and other people. Do you think that there's any kind of potential for that to ever happen on Reddit? Do you? I'm guessing you would say probably likely not. But do you think there's any chance of anything like that happening?
To a certain extent, it already does happen.
Okay.
Um,
How?
Well, within the feminist subreddits,
Okay, sure.
It's obvious that what's going on there.
Sure, yeah. And then these are moderators in that Reddit, so it's not not like admins from Reddit overall. It's just these moderators. They can do what they want.
I mean, feminism as an ideology is pretty widespread, and there's certainly moderators in a lot of the major subreddits that ascribe to the feminist ideology. And I've certainly seen situations of this kind of thing happening, of moderators in the default subreddits having enough of the stupid juvenile and maybe somewhat jocular discussion that goes on, the kind of casual, what's feminists describe as casual sexism, right? These comments that are somewhat generalizing of all women, and often in a negative way, but are not like hardcore outright. I don't want to call it sexist, because to me that term gets used too often. But it's not a hardcore anti-woman statement. It's a casual kind of dismissal of women, and these kinds of things. I've seen people complain about their post being removed, and we try very hard to keep the men's rights subreddit topical, and that means one of the things we've started doing is saying, look, the activities of other moderators and other subreddits is not specifically an issue of men's rights, because these are private. These subreddits are technically owned by the moderators. They're private spaces. They're not public spaces as much as people think they are. So all these kinds of things happen so often on Reddit that if people were to post it on men's rights every single time it happened, then there'd be nothing else. It would just swamp the front page. So we kind of get rid of them, but I get to see every single time someone posts from the feminism subreddit that they got banned for saying something, or from a default subreddit, or anything like this, where these moderators are starting to crack down on this kind of stupid comments that are considered casually sexist by feminists. And so there's definitely that crackdown starting to happen. I'm not going to comment on the scale of it because Reddit's so huge I can't possibly know, but I've seen it starting to happen, and it's one of the reasons why I think, Reddit's starting to go downhill a little bit.
I see.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that does it for the interview. Again,
Okay.
I'd like to congratulate you and thank you very much for joining me tonight.
Well, thanks for the invite. Actually, we had a reporter come to or send a message to the moderators recently, wanting to interview us all as well.
Yeah. Who were they from, if you don't mind me asking?
Daily Motion, I think.
Hmm.
So the guy, this was 4 weeks ago now.
Yeah.
And I mean, we wrote a lot. We answered all his questions to great extent. He had tons of material. He's written, I think, like 2 articles a day since then, and not a single one on the Men's Rights subreddit.
Really interesting.
Every time, and this has happened multiple times. These reporters come and they want to interview the moderators, and I mean, you're within the men's rights movement, so you're obviously different. But these reporters come, they want to interview us, and then they realize that, wait, the things that they're saying are not so crazy, and we can't make them look terrible.
Yeah,
so
we can't hype it up.
Right. They can't hype it up. They can't make us look bad because we didn't say anything bad. We're not crazy psycho people who think all women are horrible and out to sperm jack people and all this stupid stuff. I mean, there's a difference between the statement, women exist and there is no protection in society against that behavior.
Right.
That's one argument. And the argument they want to claim that we're making is all women are going to do that. Well, that's ridiculous. We're saying society doesn't protect against these kinds of behaviors. It protects against other behaviors, but not behaviors done by women, because they're treated as this hypo-agent class, So, and then when these reporters talk to us, they can't find anything juicy, anything to trash us with legitimately, and I guess they don't have the guts to try and make stuff up, so they don't end up publishing. And this has happened many, many times.
Yeah, we've had the same thing happen to us too. The whole thing with ABC News in 2020, a perfect example of that. And I mean, there's been many times where we've gotten calls from people who want to interview us, and they ask us questions, and then we never see anything get published.
Yeah.
But when they do publish it, it's there's misquotes or mischaracterizations.
Oh, yeah.
It's bad.
Right. You have to be so careful with the things that you actually say. And I mean, so doing this interview with you by voice, it's I trust you that you're not going to mischaracterize me, but I would not trust myself to do this with a different reporter, because one misword or maybe what they might characterize as a Freudian slip or whatever stupid thing you accidentally say that you don't actually mean, you're just trying to speak faster than your brain can think. It's really easy to mischaracterize those things, but when it's in writing and when I reply and I take 2 hours to nitpick over everything I've said to make sure it's exactly how I want, it's really hard to mischaracterize that kind of stuff. So.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Sillymod, for your time. And again, congratulations to everybody at Men's Rights Reddit, all the mods. You guys have done a great job.
Congratulations to the Men's Rights Movement and to AVFM. I mean, you guys have played a huge role in the subreddit and in the movement, and kind of are one of the major fronts of actual activism. People blame the subreddit for not doing any actual activism, but that's because it's a subreddit. We need groups like AVFM, Cafe, what's that one in the UK again?
That's Justice for Men and Boys.
Right, Justice for Men and Boys. These kinds of groups, and my 2 personal favorites are National Family Coalition or whatever it is.
That's the one that Robert Franklin.
Right, and then the other one is, or no, not National Family Coalition. I get emails from them. They used to be crap. You know what? I don't want to say National Family Coalition because I don't know if that's them, and I don't have access to my emails. I'm on their mailing list. But more importantly, the Community for the Wrongly Accused. Pierce Harlan is a genius. He is so well written. And people like this that do the actual activism, it's you guys that deserve all the credit for making the men's rights movement what it is, for actually pushing the boundaries, for getting social change. The subreddit is just a place to kind of an introduction to the men's rights movement. But it's the activists themselves, the people who are out there doing the work, releasing their real name, people who are brave enough to stand by their statements with their real name. Those people deserve all the credit, in my opinion, for doing such great work.
Well, it takes all kinds.
Sure, it does, but I think that those people with brave enough to release their real names and do the actual activism, those people are brilliant.
Right, well, so, thank you very much for the kind words, and again, thank you for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thanks very much for the invite. Have a good night.